What's up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about time management. And what I specifically mean by that is identifying what's unproductive, realizing it's unproductive, and cutting it out of your life. So I just think it's very important. And first off, I want to just start off right at the start with probably the most important thing, which is identifying what's important and what's not important or unproductive to you. So you might find this interesting because it may not be what you seem. It's not exactly what you think at times. So I'll give you a great example. Listening to music. Certain people would just blanket statements say that this is an unproductive activity. Well, technically speaking, not necessarily. If music is your craft or music is your skill set, then listening to music as inspiration, especially if you're an established musician already and you've sold millions of albums like Taylor Swift, then music as a hobby or something you do on a day-to-day basis is not technically wasting time. You are drawing inspiration. You're keeping up to date with current competition, or I don't think Taylor Swift would ever view it as competition, but more so as inspiration or other genres and compositions to compare and motivate and draw from for her own compositions and for future compositions and all sorts of other stuff. And you can definitely tell that specifically for Taylor Swift, she draws on that because if you haven't been listening to her, her music has been shifting from album to album into a more pop-centered type song. And I mean, one could argue it's not even pop. It's kind of indie and it's kind of all over the place now. But it's definitely being inspired by certain new things that she's been listening to and absorbing. So the point of that is that based off your skill set and craft, perhaps you get a buy. You get a pass on the fact that you're not wasting time. Now, I have to add the caveat that perhaps you still are. If you're an amateur musician or you're still in school and you're trying to make it big as a musician, like the millions of other kids out there, chances are, you're probably wasting a lot of time or making an excuse to say that, oh, I'm just listening to music and getting inspired and working on my craft. But in reality, what you're doing is you're using it as an excuse or crutch so that you can waste 3 or 4 or 5 hours in a day to do something. So again, it doesn't have to be music, whatever it is. Maybe it's video games, maybe it's arts, maybe it's something else, fashion videos online. And I would say that sometimes you don't know what will bring success in a future career pathway. So that doesn't mean to cut it out completely and have 0% of that in your day-to-day life. However, I think it's very important to be able to basically cut out the extensive amount of time you spend on it if you need to. So you really have to have that ability and really execute on it. Don't just think that you have that ability, but in practice, every time when it's essential that you cut down on it, you don't. And I just think that's so important. So for instance, let's say you're spending 3 or 4 plus hours on something that's, cutting into your time. And maybe it's watching fashion videos on YouTube, or listening to music, or playing video games, or doing this or that. Can you, for the next week, cut it down to an hour a day or 30 minutes a day? Do you have control, or does it have control over you? And I think that's very important. The next thing I think is realizing and figuring out and setting the priorities and goals that you have in life. Because with that in mind, that really determines whether certain things are productive or unproductive. A certain activity like watching movies with your family or friends is only considered productive or unproductive based off what you establish. So, for instance, if your goals are to just have a great time, have bonding time with your family, and do better in life and connect with people, then going to the movies constantly is not considered unproductive based off your goals. However, if your goals are to further your career path and succeed in life, then that doesn't hold true anymore. And again, you can have more than one goal. So maybe you have both of those goals. For me, I value all those things. Family bonding time, you have to have a certain amount of that. With your partner or your wife or spouse, you want to have a certain amount of that too. And so also you probably want to succeed in your career path as well. However, you have to balance these two. You can't be going out to the movies every single day and then after that, chilling with the friends and family for another 3 hours. That's going to eat up all your time. And if you have no control on that, it's going to consume you. And how are you going to succeed in your career when you're doing that? So I think organizing your time is very important if you have more than one of these goals. And so really understanding that and capping that and being able to control that and understanding and assessing how it's been going is very important. So for instance, if you haven't spent time with your family for a year and your career is doing more than well, then you know where you should be. However, if you're spending all this time playing video games, watching countless movies and TV shows, and your career's just gone down the drain, you know where to go as well. So have that ability to cap these things. Guess what? Most people don't. Most people are just screwing around. They don't think about this stuff. They just simply think, oh, that's a cool movie. I'm going to watch it now. Oh, let me turn on some Netflix. Let me watch this for the next hour. And then when that hour ends, another hour of Netflix begins. They're not thinking through this process. So understand that. I personally think I've had a pretty full life, and it's kind of embarrassing to admit it, but it's true. I have had a full life, but at the same time, as I've been growing into my own and realizing that I now have to be a man and take control of my time management, my parents are no longer, dictating what I do in this hour and what I do in that hour and so forth. And some of you may have been more independent while you were younger, and then you had more free time and you spent it doing whatever you wanted. The point is, you're independent now. So what that means is you have to figure out what you're going to do with your time. And if you waste it, it's your responsibility if you waste it and you're unproductive. So, your parents aren't dictating whether you go to this or summer camp or this activity and so forth. And so if you're wasting too much time doing this or that, that's a problem. I've had a pretty full life. And honestly, it's partially embarrassing to admit that I've wasted a lot of it, but at the same time, we're humans, so we all kind of do this. And I'm also very thankful that I've had a full life in a lot of ways. All the popular movies that you've heard of, and some you haven't heard of overseas, I've seen. A lot of big TV shows, a lot of pop culture, a lot of niche culture, manga, anime, nerd culture. I understand it because I've had the opportunity and I've been able to just watch it and experience it. A lot of big TV shows, Doctor Who, Big Bang Theory. I've watched Dragon Ball Z, those are kind of nerd things. I don't know why I'm citing this. Disney movies, Marvel movies, on and on and on. I've pretty much had a pretty normal upbringing, give or take, kinda. Not exactly, but generally speaking, I've had a taste of normal American culture. With the TV shows on the Disney Channel, on Cartoon Network, and Dexter's Lab, and SpongeBob, and Family Guy. And I've watched all those shows and lots of episodes of them. And I've gone out to the mall and I've bought clothing. And I know what American Eagle is, and Gucci, and Kim Kardashian, and all that stuff. And I've experienced it all. And, one could argue I've wasted more time than necessary doing all that and watching YouTube videos and just wasting time sleeping and on the internet just exploring random websites and videos and all this time being wasted. And so for me, I'm working on capping that and working on being able to control it if I need to. And I think that's more, it's being, that's very important. And I think I'll be more for the better in the long run for doing that. And I think you will too. And, like it or not, there's plenty of people who have done fairly well despite not being able to cap this stuff. In the long term, will you do as well if you can't cap this stuff? Most likely not. It may catch up on you. But like it or not, from my observations, seeing a lot of American culture, YouTube and so forth, there have been, plenty of people, I would say most people, who don't even take a moment to understand this. And they're doing decently fine right now, and they have for a while. And there's really no cap. They've pursued their whatever they wanted to do, and for some reason, shape, or form, they've been able to do fairly well despite spending all this time, doing a variety of stuff, watching videos, going on fashion websites, watching the 7th season of this TV show and that TV show, and so forth. And then going on a shopping spree and so forth. Having said that, I think what's truly important is being able to control your time management and voluntarily choosing to allocate specific time to activities and being able to be the master of what you want to do. Most people don't really do that. They're just screwing around and just chasing whatever's in front of them. And I think time management is very important. And I'd rather be that person who has mapped out their day and is in full control of it, and then decides, okay, for the next 2 hours, I allocate this time for me to goof off and have fun, whether it's, Forever 21 fashion websites or, watching random, funny, entertaining, but highly unproductive videos that will leave me really no better in terms of furthering my skill set or career than the next guy. I'd rather do that than be the guy or girl who is being completely controlled by these things and has no possible control over this stuff, and then realizes years later that it's consumed an enormous amount of their lives, and they could have been much better off had they not done that. When you study the most successful people of all time, a lot of these people, what they did was they worked hard while everyone else was partying or just screwing around. And so having that mastery of time, I think, is important to getting to that level where you can succeed and get that advantage over other people who are not doing that as much. And honestly, It's not that hard. It really isn't. Like, there's so many people who are literally at a whim to all sorts of nonsense. You know, they're spending half an hour here doing their hair, 20 minutes here watching twerk videos on YouTube, 30 minutes here, you know, trolling around and, you know, watching part of a TV episode. And then they don't even realize it, but if you add all that stuff together, 2 minutes here, 10 minutes here, they've wasted maybe 4 or 5 hours of their day just doing nothing. Pretty much nothing. And some of these people may have lucked out. You know, they may have found some niche or some career path or whatever else where they're doing well enough to do that. And that's fine for them. If that's what they want to do with their lives, that's great. And I mean, I see it a lot with YouTube celebrities. I see it a lot with a lot of people. But I think, you know, even them, they wouldn't mind it if they could actually control and realize and figure out the time they're wasting and really, you know, voluntarily choose to allocate that time rather than just be at a whim to it, and realize how much time they're wasting and stop screwing around and get more done. You know, so many people say, I don't have time, I'm busy. And then when you really look at their lives, they're wasting a lot of it. And I'm guilty of this too. I'm trying to work on this extensively. And one thing I highly recommend you guys do, as you know, this is probably a really awesome tip. Um, Consider it a gift for you sticking around until now to watch this video. Get a piece of notepaper and a pen. And for the next week, map out every minute of your time. And it doesn't have to be so articulate on a minute to minute basis, but you know, get it down to a grain. What are you spending your 24 hours doing? I remember doing this and I mapped it out mathematically and I was just blown away, literally blown away. I knew I had 24 hours in a day and then, you know, 7 days a week. And I was literally just shocked to death because, you know, I gave myself a lot of leeway. Oh, I think I only sleep 8 hours a day, but I'll give it 10 hours. And then I gave myself a lot of leeway in other ways. And then I mapped it out and I realized, okay, I was only, you know, doing productive work for maybe 35 hours in a day, which left me, if I added it up all mathematically, 40 hours left on a weekly basis that was being spent doing pretty much stupid stuff, trolling about and so forth. And, you know, arguably it wasn't completely, you know, unproductive stuff. And, you know, again, I touched on this at the start of this video. Some of this stuff may be of use to your other goals in life. Some of this stuff may be of use to your creative aspects or your skill sets, or maybe your possible future career paths, following your passion. And, you know, you may have to, you know, give a pass on some of it. But when you're spending 40 plus hours on some of it, that's just too much. I think when I did this, I was spending a lot of that time, basically, part of it was on video games, part of it was on YouTube and random websites, and the rest, which was the majority, was spent walking around my campus and other areas and trying to talk to and approach girls. But in reality, what ended up happening was I chickened out a lot, and most of that time was just spent walking around because there wasn't many people around at the time I did this, and at the same time I was kind of picky, and then that in combination with the fact that there was barely any people, it really didn't work out at all. And the reason there wasn't people was because it was summer. So long story short, I needed to cut back on it because, you know, despite it being my way of furthering one of my goals, which was success with women, I was just spending way too much time on it. The bang for the buck wasn't there, and I needed to get certain other things sorted out. Were there certain weeks where I realized like this was a priority and I wanted to work on it, and I deemed that more important than other things? Uh, yes, and therefore I didn't feel like it was unproductive. That's what I wanted to do with my day, and that was probably the best thing I could have done given my time and resources. Um, and so that's what I did. The point being, though, you have to figure out what you're doing, and mapping it out really helps. I mean, there's so many people out there, I guarantee you, if they had just mapped it out, and if they really were concerned about this, they could shave off and save maybe 20 hours in their life. And that can be free time for you. So now if you're still sticking around, now it gets a little bit deeper. So I've encountered this myself. Sometimes you're using these things as coping mechanisms. Why? Because for a lot of reasons, psychological reasons. Maybe your life sucks so much and you're using things, whether it's, entertaining videos on YouTube, video games, pornography, whatever it is. You're using these things, movies, TV shows, as possibly a variety of things. For instance, a form of escapism for the crappy life you live. And, there's no easy answer to getting out of this, because, you try and cut back, but you can't, because it's a coping mechanism. And, you can't just simply cut it out because the rest of your life is just so horrible, or you hate your job, that it's just like, I can't do it. So how do you get around that? Well, there's no easy answer. Like for me, I had to do a lot of thinking and so forth and figuring it out. I don't even know if for me, I don't know if it was that deep as a coping mechanism, but to a certain extent it may have been. So if that's the case, or if there's some other psychological thing, you have to figure that stuff out. And I would say you have to do it in a strategic, a healthy, and smart way. And it may require some creativity. So for instance, you may first have to, rather than keep trying to tackle it from I'm just going to cut out the wasted time stuff, because that would never work. And it took me many weeks to figure that out. Work on the crappy part of your life. How can you make that better? Can you make it more fun? Can you make it more enjoyable, at least for the time being? You can set a long-term strategy of getting out of that job. Maybe forcing yourself to get fired. Maybe start researching certain things. I kind of, this was kind of, indirectly, but because I got interested in travel and travel bloggers, I read up a ton and researched a ton and watched a lot of videos from travel bloggers. And from that, I learned a lot about how, you can do a lot with a very low salary. $10,000 to $20,000 to $30,000 a year. You are good in many, many countries. Like, that's enough for you to travel very well, very lavishly in plenty of countries. Asia, a bunch of places. And, it requires a lot of resourcefulness, but you can have extravagant, fun, awesome trips and travel for a very long time, years, with $20,000 to $30,000. And it requires resourcefulness and all this stuff. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that, understanding this and having this knowledge, you can kind of be relinquished a bit, or released a bit from this idea of, I need this job, I need this 9 to 5, or I need a certain amount of income to survive so I don't starve. So that may, help you in terms of long-term strategies, in terms of quitting your job or moving forward and so forth. And then for the time being, there's plenty you can do in terms of maybe improving your lifestyle in other ways so that it doesn't suck so much, so that you can relinquish unproductive things. I'm reading this book called The How of Happiness, and it talks about mindset shifts and how, honestly, your mind and how you perceive things and your mindsets and perspectives may be creating, as Milton Friedman of, sorry, Martin Friedson? No. Martin Friedman of Paradise Lost says, he says, the mind can make a heaven of hell or a hell of heaven. And the point of that is how mindsets and perspectives are very important for long-term happiness. And, there's plenty of things you can do to make a heaven of your hell in terms of just your perspective, and also in terms of, certain activities you can do at your job or outside of work or whatever else. So understand all that stuff and work on it. And then the next thing I want to talk about is the fact that, you don't need to completely relinquish your unproductive activities, because perhaps they're not so unproductive. And I've seen this again in a lot of YouTubers, but also in a lot of people who have later on transformed their passion or their interest into a part-time career or full-time career. Whether it's a YouTuber who plays video games, or a fashion designer who likes fashion, or a girl who doesn't like her 9-to-5 jobs and slowly starts documenting her travel experiences, and that slowly morphs into a travel blog or a travel vlog series on YouTube or whatever else. These people followed what they were interested in. And so I think that's very important in terms of not dialing it back to 0%. Keep your interests, keep your hobbies, keep your passions. But maybe you have to dial them back. Maybe you have to cut out some of them. You can keep certain ones. For me, it may be video games. It may be vlogging. It may be reading books. It may be listening to music and being entertained on YouTube. Because all those things, on some level, may translate to future things that may help my goals in life, my career goals. Maybe I want to be a successful person on YouTube and form a career off of that. My knowledge and experience analyzing and watching all these YouTube videos may come in handy. I'm want to grow a gaming channel one day, so video gaming may be of use. At the same time, though, I want to dial them back and have that control to dial them back so that they don't consume my life, and that I'm in control of how much time I'm spending rather than the other way around. I want to be able to, and I should be able to, cut that down to 10 minutes or an hour a day rather than 5 hours a day, if I so choose, in order to progress other goals or areas I want to improve on that are more important at that time in my life. So I understand all this. And I think it's, useful to understand the value of certain hobbies or interests that may bear fruit in the distant future. I don't think on their own they can bear fruit. But with creativity and entrepreneurialism and imagination, coupled with your interest in a hobby and maybe developing that skill set, that can grow. I mean, I see it in a lot of areas: photography, videography, video editing. You don't know where that interest may grow into in the future. I mean, just look at some talk show hosts. Look at Steve Jobs or Jimmy Fallon. They have incorporated certain hobbies into the entertainment that they've brought, or the service or product that they've brought. For instance, Jimmy Fallon brings a lot of singing and music and all that into his talk show entertainment, from History of Rap with Justin Timberlake, Those videos got millions of views. His extensive rap knowledge helped him there. His performance skills, you know, it created this whole lip sync battle series on YouTube, which garnered millions upon millions of views as well. And then he's performed a lot of songs. So it's helped in terms of him growing his entertainment empire. James Corden's done that as well. They've catered to their strengths and interests. Then there's Steve Jobs. He took a typography class. And at his Stanford speech, one of the things he said was that, you know, it's hard to connect the dots looking forward, but looking back, it's so clear. His time in that typography class, back when he was very young, at the time it may have seemed unproductive and a waste of time and in no way useful. But Apple computers, and all computers for that matter, since according to Steve Jobs, Windows copied Mac and Microsoft copied Apple, all keyboards would not have the beautiful typography that they do have and the fonts that they do have if it was not for Steve Jobs taking that typography class. So you get the idea. Anyhow, you know, I like to ramble, I like to talk, so this video's gone on for long enough. Again, I set this at a 5-minute video, but nonetheless, it's gone on for much longer than that. So that's all I gotta say. You know, work on your skills, cultivate them, and don't cut them out completely. And last thing would probably be some of those skills you may need to cut out. It's just how it is. And what I mean by that is certain things, at least for the time being, are just unproductive almost all the way around, no matter how you look at them. Certain things like maybe it's Facebook for you, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram. For 99% of you guys, it's not going to bear true fruit in terms of your goals. And perhaps it's not helping you in a lot of other ways either. It's not really that entertaining. You're not getting enjoyment that much from them, and so forth. Again, it's a case-by-case basis. Perhaps it's not Instagram for you. Perhaps it's texting or Facebook or buying a $5 coffee every single day or $5 in cigarettes every single day. Perhaps you could save a lot of money on a yearly basis. I mean, just do the math. 5 times 365. And then, you know, multiply that by the next 40 years of your life. You can save a lot of money from that, which can be deployed for, you know, investing in yourself or other reasons. Some things are just, you know, it's very clear that for 99% of you guys, most likely at a 90% plus probability, they're not going to help you in terms of any of your goals in life that much. So you got to cut them out. You know, for that 1%, it may. You know, if you are in the social media space, if that's your career pathway, if that's where you're headed, maybe it is useful to you. Or perhaps you get a lot of enjoyment from it. It's a very social activity. It brings you friendship and bonds and so forth. It connects you with long lost friends. Then maybe that's not the case. But for most of you, it is the case. And you could save a lot of time on a daily basis or a lot of money. I mean, do the same math with time. 10 minutes saved a day or an hour saved a day. Multiply that by 365 days a year. Then multiply that by the next 40 or 50 years of your life. You may just have saved half a year of your life cutting that crap out. I was going to curse there, but I caught myself. That's all I got to say. I don't know what I'm going to do with this video. If I'm going to edit it down, if I'm going to just upload the whole 35-minute video. You know, I really tried to do... Okay, I really didn't try that hard, but I was intending on just doing a 5-minute viral type, you know, short video that I've kind of realized that you kind of need to create success on YouTube. But there you go. Here I am with a 35-minute video. Anyhow, I don't know. That's all I gotta say. Thanks for watching. As always, like and subscribe. See you in my next video. Peace.